Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville-Knox County government, politics, business, education, and just about anything else that grabs our fancy. I'm Scott Barker, editor of Compass, a subscription-based website and newsletter where we report on all those topics and more. And you can find us at CompassKnox.com. We are recording Compass Points in the opulent studios of Barbarian Productions, where Lord Seth Barber, recognized by the mayor of the city of Knoxville as Lord Seth Barber, reigns supreme.
Hey, I paid good money for that title, and I demand that the you plebes out there use it. I don't care. This week's weather report, it got cold again, and I'm really upset about it.
Yeah, but it's spring break.
I know. One of the news guys said it best on this last full day of winter. It's nice and spring-like. And it looks like tomorrow on that first full day of spring, it's going to be pretty winter-like. And he was dead on.
Well, and that's East Tennessee.
That is. I mean, I think you called it. You called for snow after I did my weather report last week. So.
Well, I wasn't quite accurate on the snow, but it did get cold.
I think yesterday, I was outside, and I think it felt like sleet a little bit. Like I was outside. We took the dog for a walk, and it was precipitating something, but it felt a little bit too hard to be water. But it was very light and very quick, and it came and went. But
sleetish.
Yeah. We're making up words today, and I like it.
Well, we've got a little bit to talk about that happened last week that we reported on. We've got one thing we'll hit is the Alpha Kappa Alpha, which is an African American sorority. Had their Southeast Regional Conference here, and that doesn't sound like too much, but it's the impact of AKA and other African American sororities and fraternities in the African American community is huge, much larger than sororities and fraternities, and that are traditionally white. Much bigger impact than they have on their communities, but we had our correspondent Angela Dennis, who went there. She had a good report on it. The University of Tennessee Boyd Center for Business and Economic Research came out with a statewide business survey. We'll look at the results of that. The City Council passed on first reading an ordinance that will kind of expand the places in the city where festivals can be held that sell beer. So that's going to be it's passed on first reading, second reading next week, and we'll start out with the Middle Housing Report. This was put together by the Knoxville-Knox County Planning Office, and they had promised that after a year, the city's middle housing initiative would get a review and a report, and this is the result of it. We've talked about middle housing a lot on the podcast. What it is it's duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhouses, very small apartment buildings, things that are in the middle between single-family homes and large apartment complexes. These were housing types that were generally allowed up until the late 40s and early 50s, when zoning laws kind of shifted in favor of single-family houses. And the city recently, or last year, 1 year ago, passed this ordinance that will allow this to be built, allow these types of houses to be built in what are called the traditional neighborhoods. These are the older neighborhoods. Most of them have grids rather than cul-de-sacs and meandering roads like subdivisions outside the outside the middle of the city. And these are the traditional neighborhoods that are all inside the Interstate 640 Beltway. They're the older neighborhoods like Mechanicsville, Oakwood, Lincoln Park, Bell Morris, those neighborhoods that are inside the city, inside the Beltway, tend to be older, have older housing stock, and a few empty lots. So that's very important because that's where a lot of these housing types are being built. The report said that in the first year of existence, there were 40. They had received 50 applications. You have to apply to go through this process, and they fielded 50 applications. As of the end of January, 31 of them had gone through the entire review process, and 18 were still under review. And the intent of this is to provide more housing options. It's not and to increase density in an incremental way. They were one phrase that planning staff came up with was gentle density. So, but it's to these houses and these structures are supposed to fit in with the scale of the other houses in the neighborhood. They're not supposed to go in and be out of scale and out of character with the neighborhood. At least that's the intent. And one of the things is that most of these are aimed at vacant lots. 44 projects were for new construction on vacant lots. Only 5 were conversions from single-family houses to duplexes or triplexes or whatever. That was a concern about some neighborhoods that developers would come in and willy-nilly convert single-family houses to duplexes and triplexes. There's not been a stampede of that. There has been a little, but not a big stampede. Most of the applications have been for duplexes, about 30 of them, which is 60% of all the applications, and these applications come in, and it's almost like an overlay on top of the existing zoning. So you don't have to get it rezoned. So if you're in an R2 zone, and most of these are in R2 zones, which are the most common zones inside the city, it's just kind of an overlay for your property, and you can build your duplex there, and it's about 86% of them are for R2 zones. So it's easier for people to get approvals to build duplexes there. So it's not been a stampede of developers wanting to build these. There have been a couple of developers who do a majority of them. R. Bentley Marlowe, who ran for city council, is one who has been quite active in building middle housing, or trying to get approval for middle housing. He focuses most of his efforts on the Mechanicsville neighborhood, which is, again, in the area, one of the traditional neighborhoods where you can do this. And but one thing about the process is, they found out there's some bumpy roads that they've gone down. One has to do with that idea that this is an overlay for the base zoning, and some of the developers have tried to has different standards for that, and some developers have tried to mix and match setbacks and other types of things, using some standards that go with the base zoning and others that go with the middle housing standards. And planning staff said that that's something that probably needs to be clarified in the ordinance. And that's one thing. Another is there are these lots that are basically non-conforming, and what that means is they're too narrow for the base zoning, much less the middle housing zones, and it's addressing how they can be developed under this, because usually they're either narrow or too narrow, or just don't have enough area in them, and they're really more suited for single family homes rather than duplexes or triplexes, and that's something that their planning staff is looking at clarifying. And another is there is a loophole that allows more than one primary structure in a couple of the zones, and that is something that it was not intended by the ordinance, and they're going to see if council will make adjustments to that. Now, this is the whole thing with middle housing. What has to happen is planning staff would draft amendments. Planning commission would approve them or deny them. If they approve them, it goes on to city council for a vote on the code change. So nothing's going to change in the real short term. It'll probably be this summer before it even gets to council. But it's talk to Lauren Ryder, who's a city council member. Her district has a lot of these neighborhoods. She lives in Old North Knoxville, and like I said, several of her neighborhoods in her district have this, and she has been keenly interested in this, and she actually predicts that there will be fewer applications moving forward, because, as she put it, the ones that they started on so far are the low hanging fruit. And so anyway, the planning staff is committed to providing a report like this every year. And so next year at about this time, we'll see if Ryder was correct on her prediction that that applications would slow down, or if they hold steady or even speed up. So that will be something that we will take another look at next year. And speaking of Lauren Ryder and City Council, last week, City Council passed an ordinance on first reading. It takes two readings to pass an ordinance. They passed on first reading an ordinance that will expand where you can hold festivals that sell beer. The under the current ordinance, only in public areas do this, parks, streets, if you want to close them off, that sort of thing. Those kind of types of festivals, you can only serve beer in certain locations. For instance, the Old City, you can shut off. A group can shut off streets in the Old City and serve beer as part of a festival. Market Square's the same way. And there's several other places, but under the current ordinance, those specific locations are laid out. And if you're not in one of those specific locations, you can't do it. And so our own Lord Seth Barber, who, among the many things that he does, is one of the organizers of Holaroo. He went to Ryder and started working on this. Seth, how did this come about? How did you start? What was the impetus?
Okay, so I guess, again, full disclosure, as I'm involved in all parts of this, as a part of this show, it's important that I designate the fact that I did spend the money to get my title of Lord, and that's number 1A, and everybody needs to know that I paid for that. But no, 2 is like, this is something that, like, I've been part of this process. This is something important to me. We are working on Holaroo number 3 here in May, and it was always something we wanted to do. And you know, if you guys have listened to me on my other show or heard me on here from time to time, and the quote that was in the story on me was, I'm dumb enough to ask. A lot of people like see this kind of stuff and they think it's too big, it's too complicated. It's this way for a reason or whatever, and just kind of walk away. And instead of walking away, I went through the process of like, well, why does Gay Street get to do it and my stretch of Central can't? And so the long and short of it is, over the years, different festival organizers would go to the city, and then the city would carve out a particular thing. And so in the current version of the ordinance, you see all these very specific, this street for this type of thing, this street for this type of thing, this park can do this type of thing. And so Lauren's take on it was, you know, this doesn't make any sense. Why do we have all these specific little subsets? Why don't we just make it a unified code for the city? And so anybody who wants to use public space for a thing can go through a complicated, long-running, not easy process. That's an important part to get out, because one of the fears that a lot of people have been throwing out in discussion is like, well, now every street's going to be shut down every weekend, and it's going to be a raging block party and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's not. It's just not. You know, there's a big part of this that there are city resources that are involved that the permittee has to pay for. And so if you want to shut down your cul-de-sac in your neighborhood in the city of Knoxville to do a block party and legally serve beer, it's expensive. It's costly. You're going to have to do a lot of paperwork, a lot of time, and you have to pay a lot of money to the city for KPD to be out there to do security and all the different parts and pieces. So anyway, like, that's an important part for me to advocate to get out, is that this isn't going to be something that every street's going to have stuff every weekend. But anyway, so like, you know, the history of it's just been piecemeal. And so Lawrence was like, the conversation when we started was, do we just add Happy Holler for you on this piecemeal thing, or do we just kind of unify this for the city at large? You know, and, you know, the selfish promoter in me was like, just do me. But the philosophical, the right answer to me and to Lauren was, yeah, why wouldn't everybody? Like, why can't Sevier Avenue down there on the south side do something, especially now that they've gotten cut off because of the bridge situation? I think it would be a smart thing for them to do, to try to keep their relevance up now that they're a little harder to access than they used to be. Of
course, now now the Sevier Avenue itself is all torn up with
right. I mean,
infrastructure improvements.
It's a crappy time to be a business on Sevier.
But it's a gridded neighborhood. You could theoretically go off Sevier Avenue,
right,
between Sevier Avenue and Suttree Landing Park, for example.
And Suttree Landing Park is one of the parks that did have access before too. And so anyway, like that's the idea. The idea is, you know, like the history of it to me is, I truly 1000% believe that Sundown in the City was one of the biggest steps that brought downtown Knoxville back from being I made the point at the meeting. It's like, I remember as a freshman and sophomore going down to Market Square to the one bar that was down there that served underage kids that that did karaoke on the weekends, and that's where me and my friends would go because they'd serve us. And you would leave that bar at midnight, and there were 0 people on Market Square at midnight on a Friday and Saturday night. Go down there today, and it's certainly not that. And I think, and so, you know, but that was a lot of money and energy that the city spent on getting Market Square back up. I'm not to me, this isn't asking for the city to spend anything. This is just to let me spend money and resources to put on events to try to bring up my neighborhood. And I I don't know. Obviously, I'm fairly impassioned about this thing, but there's some other parts of it too that I think are important for people to understand. Is like there's some parts of it in discussion that felt like there were new parts that are actually what is currently is, and it's in the current ordinance. It's just some of the way the discussion happened made it sound like the extended patio part of the conversation that has been in code forever. Anytime here in about a month or so, when you go to your Cinco de Mayo at your favorite Mexican restaurant and they have a tent in the parking lot, that's that code. It's always been like it has been that way for as long as I can remember. There was one thing that Lauren changed in that was on Cumberland Avenue proper. It had a variation of that same thing, and she kind of removed that so that, I mean, hell, nobody has a parking lot that they can extend their patio to and into anymore.
There aren't many parking lots on Cumberland now.
On Cumberland, but like Cumberland used to have some sort of like special carve out that it had to be touching the building, where like I'm trying to think of one of the places I've gone to with Cinco de Mayo that has a tent, like Polancho's out here on Downtown West. I've been to their Cinco de Mayo before, where they put the tent way out in the corner of the parking lot. Well, on campus, it had to touch the building. And so that just kind of went away because who cares, And so that, and then like the access one were the kind of the two discussions like that were happening. And it's like, if I'm going to close down Central to do a party, I can't close it down and make you pay a ticket to come onto Central. And I agree with that. I mean, the business part of me is like, no, I want to make you pay to even be there. But it's a public street. The public should have access to it, whether I'm doing an event or not. Now you don't get to drive on it, but if you want to come in to stop at one of the locations to pick up lunch in the middle of the event, you shouldn't have to pay extra to get your lunch. Right. And we 100% agree with that.
Yeah, and when they shut down Gay Street, which they've done, for various things, they don't charge access to Gay Street, so you can go to Mass General Store,
right?
For example, and and not even bother with.
Right, I'm not here for a Rossini Festival. Yeah. I'm just trying to go get those taffies that they got that I love so much.
But the one thing too, though, that they really emphasize is that they are the people who put on the festivals have to make sure that they use wristbands. They sell wristbands to the people who are there for the festival, to people who are 21 and older, to let the servers know they can have beer, to let police know they can be walking around with a beer, and those kinds of things. So, that's that's kind of how they're going to they envision managing that kind of crowd.
And that's one of the most of the festivals have done anyway, in some way, shape, or form. But again, a lot of this was cleanup, as I understand it from Lauren, and I think that was one of those where they changed the verb.
Yeah,
or maybe the adjective. I can't remember which one. Yeah. They changed the adjective because the original adjective made it a little bit hard. The specificity was weird. Like it had to be like unique to the event, where it kind of implied that you had to go out and spend money on a custom wristband that said what the event's name was and what date the event was on. Where the adjective changes it to, you just need to have something that it's clear for the security, for the bar staff, for everybody that's there. These are people that are allowed to have alcohol. These are people that aren't. Like I've always done it. Like we make a rule whenever I do a wristbanded event. It's not just what's the wristband of the day. It's which arm it's on. That's always been one of mine, because that's the best way to catch people trying to take wristbands off and put them on their friends. They don't think about it and put it on the other arm. So and I change it by event, so don't take this to the bank. But if we say it's a right arm wristband, it's a right arm wristband. Somebody comes up to the bar and says, "Can I get a drink?" and they have a wristband on their left arm. Nope. Go back to the thing and get a new wristband, because we didn't give you that one.
Well, aren't you sneaky?
It's me trying to outsneak the sneaky people that are trying to sneak in drinks and stuff like that. And so, but again, like I said, I think the bottom line here is this is a way for my neighborhood as well as other neighborhoods in town to put something like this on to help, unify and maybe highlight some of the unique neighborhoods and parts of town we have. And, then the other part too, that's a bonus to me. It's like, well, you don't live very far from the holler. Lauren obviously doesn't live very far from the holler or something like that. When we do an event like this, she can walk there, and then she can walk home. She doesn't have to go down to Market Square or Gay Street or something to be part of one of these events. She can have one right in her neighborhood and save that drive time with or without the alcohol. And I think that's part of the game too here.
Yeah, this allows, for instance, Bearden, the Hamburg area of Bearden, if those merchants there want to, I can't remember the name of the organization, that kind of the Bearden Village, if they wanted to put on a fundraiser or whatever, and now they could get some of those streets off of Kingston Pike. They can shut those off and have a street festival there. Sure. Or you could do this if you wanted an event at Victor Ashe Park in Northwest Knoxville. You couldn't do that. You can't do that yet, not now. But after this goes through, you can have an event there and sell alcohol there if you go through all these hoops.
Right, and that's the thing. And an important distinction is that if you want to sell alcohol as part of the event is a very important distinction here. Well, I guess if it gets a little not distinct here. I apologize. Is you can't you can't do it and have alcohol on the street, even if it's not for sale. Either way, like you can't have if you want to do a neighborhood block party and you want to shut your neighborhood down for the day, you could do that part of it, but the alcohol has to be sold by a nonprofit at your event.
Right.
So if it's just a neighborhood block party, you need to bring in, and it can be, if you have an actual 501c neighborhood group, it can be the nonprofit involved, but it can't be a BYOB event.
Right.
You can't just show up with a cooler and drink on your road in front of your house because you have an event. That's not an option for me. Like, some of the details that get weird on these for the business people that are looking into this is I do own a business in the holler as well. You can't come into my place and buy a beer and then take it out into the festival. When you buy a beer from me, it has to stay in my premises, and then if you want to go outside, that beer stays inside. You go and you have to buy a beer separately outside. And so there's a lot of little its and buts and whatever about this. It's not easy to do. That's the bottom line here. But I think, to me, I love the holler. I've fallen in love with the holler over the last couple of years of being down there. And I think it has potential to be a great, cool, distinct sub nightlife spot for Knoxville. And this is the best way I could think to really shine the light on it for everybody, is to get these events going. So you come down for the event day and you're like, oh, that's down here. Oh, that thing's here. Okay, cool. And then you come back next weekend after that, stuff like that.
All right. Well, we'll find out in a little bit more than a week if this passes on second reading, which it probably will. The vote was 7-0 last Tuesday with Andrew Roberto abstaining. An abstention does not count as a vote, so he had some questions about. Ryder made a lot of last minute revisions to her proposal that, and he was uncomfortable moving forward with that primarily, and then and Charlie Thomas was absent; he wasn't there at all. So it passed with no negative votes last Tuesday. And so next Tuesday, it'll come up again. And if it passes then Hollaroo and other festivals and other places, downtown or in the city, will be able to serve beer at their festivals.
And hey, tune into your CTV. I'll probably be down there again, and I'll go nervously repeat my pitch again to make sure City Council continues. It's been very, I don't know, just as a layperson in the game, it's been a very interesting and kind of fun, nerve-wracking experience, going through this process, because it didn't feel like it should have been that difficult. Like, getting people to vote yes or no, sure, that's one thing, but just to do the I have for a little bit of blowing smoke here, I have the utmost respect for Lauren for taking this project on, because it's a very complicated, for as simple as the result really is. It's very complicated, very convoluted process to do all the paperwork, to get all the things, to try to make sure that, like some of those amendments were just, I forgot to put that sentence in the update. Right. And there's for a page and a half of actual literal words, there's hundreds of hours that have been put in by Lauren and a few other people trying to make this a thing. And so it's been very neat to be a part of and watch the process happen. for me, just as a layperson playing along with this.
All right. Well, we'll see about the outcome next week. One other thing that happened this week was recently was the Boyd Center for Business and Economic Research in the Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee came out with their annual survey of state business owners, and these are business owners from mom and pop stores to large corporations, and they always try to gauge the temperature of the business community, and it's kind of interesting. Of course, this year with the Trump administration coming in and making some big changes, or trying to make some big changes, it kind of makes the results a little bit more interesting than they would otherwise be. One thing that they found was that the business community overwhelmingly, and when I say overwhelmingly, this is like more than 80%, want the federal tax cuts that passed in 2017 and are scheduled to expire this year. They want those to continue. Not a real surprise there. Those taxes primarily help people with higher incomes and businesses. So the business interests want to keep their taxes as low as possible, and so they want those cuts to be extended. And they think that and controlling inflation are the two things that would help their companies more than anything else. And of course, inflation is going to be tricky. I mean, it was really high first couple of years of the Biden administration. It was down when Biden left office to closer to normal levels. But then when the Trump administration took over, a lot of things happened, like imposing tariffs, and then not imposing tariffs, and then imposing tariffs again, and then going back and forth on different tariffs on goods from China, Canada, Mexico, other countries around the world. And the business community doesn't think that tariffs would help them a whole lot. And so tariffs have a dual impact in that they also tend to force prices up, which is inflation, which they don't want. So it's kind of interesting to see kind of how that apply. How those attitudes that the business community has, how they run into the reality of what's going on in the overall economy. And the one thing that where things do kind of jibe is prior to the administration taking over, the Haslam College of Business also puts out an economic report to the governor. They predicted that Tennessee's economy would grow about 2.7%. The GDP would grow about 2.7% this year, which is better than the 2% that the federal the national GDP was predicted to grow. And the business community kind of is in line with that. They think that Tennessee's economy is a little bit better than the federal, the national economy. However, just the other day, the Federal Reserve, declined to raise interest rates or lower interest rates, even declined to lower interest rates, and they revised their forecast down for the national economy. So we don't know how that will affect our economy here locally. One other issue that the Boyd Center asked about was immigration, and which, as we all know, has been one of the focuses of the Trump administration, and immigration is just not a priority among Tennessee business owners. So that's not there now. Of course, if the immigration policy, if what actually happens with immigration winds up being what the Trump administration has put forward, which is mass deportations, then we've got some workforce issues, and that's one of the things that the business community is very concerned about. The workforce, they don't have enough employees, and the employees they do get aren't trained well enough to do a lot of the jobs that are open. So the economy is one of those intertwined beasts, and so there are trade-offs and all kinds of ways you can parse things out in the economy, but for the most part, the business community is just kind of looking at this, and they're picking the things that they that are good for them. But again, with the this survey was taken right when President Trump took office, so it's not reflective of anything that they're looking at that has been enacted so far. So that's very important to note. It will be very interesting to see when this report is repeated next year, much like the middle housing report is for the city, but to see how attitudes in the business community change, 1 year into the new administration. So one other topic I wanted to hit on was the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, which is primarily African Americans, the oldest African American Greek organization in the country. Held their Southeastern Regional Conference here. Normally, a group that holds a conference here, we don't really report on. Lots of organizations hold conferences here all the time that we don't report on. But I thought we'd take a look at this one because of the importance of the Divine Nine, 9 fraternities and sororities that are primarily membership primarily African American, and they have an outsized influence on the black community. They are very politically powerful. Kamala Harris, for instance, was an AKA is an AKA soror, as they call the sisters.
This one you make the "it's all Greek to me" joke.
You could. Anyway, she's an AKA, and a lot of prominent women, African American women in Knoxville are as well. Hence the reason we had the had the conference here. But it drew about 4,500 people. I mean, it's a big organization, and people don't realize, white people don't realize the influence that these fraternities and sororities have in the black community. Not only are they politically powerful, they're economically powerful. They do a lot of philanthropic work, a lot of programs. They fund a lot of programs. They also are important culturally. A lot of them are involved in the civil rights movement. It's it's really if you spend time with black leaders, you will realize that is they have a real outsized influence on the entire African American community in Knoxville and in other places. This is it's something that predominantly white fraternities and sororities don't have that influence. Once you get out of college, it's really not that big of a deal, but it is in the African American community. And one of the sorority was here for 3 days. They recognized a couple of local leaders who are African American, like Dr. Keith Gray who's the CEO of UT Medical Center, and Sharon Jean-Philippe, who's a UT professor, the UT NAACP chapter president, Taryn Hibbler. So there were, and they had a lot of prominent people who spoke. Sam McKenzie, who is a state representative, been very active in. He was a county commissioner before that, so he's a powerful political figure here, and a member of Omega Psi Phi, one of the Divine Nine. So he spoke, talking about leadership. The keynote speaker was Jamal Bryant, who is a minister and civil rights leader currently, and a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, another Divine Nine group. He took his time there to urge the attendees to flex their economic muscles, and his target was Target. We talked about how they have under political pressure. They, and like many other companies, have scaled back or de-emphasized their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And Bryant said, hey, use your money. Don't spend it at places that are doing that and are turning their backs on, a half century of civil rights gains since the Civil Rights Act was passed. So that was, and he called on on Target to obviously not scale back their DEI programs, but also even more than that, support historically black colleges and universities financially. We have an HBCU here in Knoxville College that is in dire financial shape. Other Fisk University in Nashville is another. Tennessee State University is a public HBCU. So anyway, that group was here. They spent a lot of money while they were here in Knoxville, and the economic impact is pretty substantial. So I had it jotted down here and haven't found it yet. Anyway, doesn't really matter. They came to flex their economic muscles, and they did. They did. They did. I still want to get to it because a lot of people think, oh well, we don't really care. It's close to $5 million. Wow, is the impact. So that's when you've got 4,500 people spending 3 or 4 nights in town, staying in hotels, going to restaurants, doing some shopping, that's going to be quite an impact. So anyway, that was one of the more interesting things that happened that isn't really government or politics, but that's one of the things that caught our attention. So and we'll have more of those next week. Next week we do have The county commission has an optional agenda review for their on Monday for where they can talk about the items that are going to be on the agenda for their voting meeting, which is the last day of the month, the next Monday. And they also have their meeting on zoning matters. Sometimes those get quite contentious, although all 7 of the zoning issues that are coming before them passed on unanimous votes by the Planning Commission, so they're not really appear to be too controversial. On Tuesday, the Sports Authority is having its last regularly scheduled meeting before Covenant Health Park officially opens. So they have been preoccupied for the last couple of years overseeing the construction of that stadium, and they're about to see the fruits of their labors. And I would imagine there's going to be kind of a construction wrap-up report of some sort. The agenda is not out yet, but it's going to be an interesting meeting where I'm sure there's going to be a lot of patting each other on the back and smiles because they are really right at finishing that stadium. And last but not least, and this is, again, one of those things that we cover because it's just interesting, and that's the Big Ears Festival. That starts this Thursday, runs through Sunday. It is the international music and arts festival that, speaking of festivals, that brings people from all around the world. Almost all 50 states, dozens of countries. The Ashley Capps is the driving force behind it. He curates Big Ears, brings in all in a really an eclectic array of performers. Some jazz, some rock, some country, some some that are difficult to define, and and they come from around the world. So it's sold out. The weekend passes are sold out. There are still some things that they have on that are free, and people can go down and see those. But if you want to see most of the shows, you should have already gotten your pass. So anyway, and we'll be covering Big Ears. We're talking to Ashley Capps himself. He's going to be putting it on. We try to talk to him every year about what makes this different, because the festival is different every year, and this one has, for instance, has a lot of conversations where he brings in people to talk about music and art, and it's going to be those are going to be some interesting things. So you can take a break from the music to do that. One of the great things about having this in Knoxville is one of the things that Capps talks about being a big plus. One of the things when you talk to visitors who come here that's a big plus is Knoxville's got a compact downtown, a lot of venues within walking distance, and Big Ears is the type of festival where you drop in and out of performances. You can spend first, if there are 2 shows going on at starting at 8:00. And one's in the Tennessee and one's in the Bijou. You can catch the first 30 minutes of a show in the Tennessee, and then walk down to the Bijou, get the last 30 minutes of that show. Things like that. Anyway, as I said, that starts Thursday, and will be a way to end up this week on an artistic note. So anyway, that's all we have for Compass Points this time around. Wanted to thank, of course, Lord Seth Barber for producing the show. Thanks a bunch, Seth, and thanks for being a guest on the show as well. So it's
I mean, I will steal the use of your platform to promote what I'm doing in all of my different facets, any option and any opportunity I can get. Almost in Agreement. Check it out. It's the other podcast.
And our music is by Will Wright, who, by the way, is going to be performing at Big Ears. So he's got or not performing really, he's got a composition that's making its world premiere. He and R.B. Morris collaborated on a kind of an experimental piece around based on Morris's poetry. So that'll be one of the things that kicks off the festival on Thursday. So anyway, thanks to Will for our music, and thanks to you folks for listening. Once again, if you want to check out what we've written about in the past, what we'll be writing about in the future, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe there. Thanks again, and we will talk to you next week.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.